Well, it used to be father knows best, now
It's government knows best.
Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and this is Winnie the Westie, who is yearning for an afternoon nap. Quebec is back in the news again, and back in the news for the wrong reasons again. From CTV News, Youth Protection, Bill 15 to prioritize interests of children over parents. Now, I know what some of you out there are thinking. Viva, you're getting too black-pilled, you're getting too cynical. How can a law, the stated objective of which is to prioritize the interests of children, be a bad thing?
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Well, here is the potential conceptual problem. Who determines what is in the best interests of the child, if not the parents? Well, that would be the government and governmental entities. But before we get to the potential theoretical conceptual problems with this law and how it could be applied, a little more on the backstory. Quebec is answering a call to reform its youth protection services, a decision made all the more relevant following the killing of a 7-year-old girl from Granby in 2019. Bill 15, adopted unanimously Thursday in the National Assembly, promises to prioritize the interests of children over all other considerations, including the interests of parents. Before we go any further, let's just open a brief parenthesis to explain what happened in 2019. It was an awful story that really rocked all of Quebec, and here are some of the details. Also from CTV News, stepmother found guilty of second-degree murder in death of Granby girl. The decision came extremely quickly for a murder case. The jury took only 5 hours to reach a unanimous verdict. The girl died in April 2019 after her stepmother wrapped her in layers of adhesive tape to tie her down overnight, the court heard during the trial. The stepmother testified that she was trying to prevent the girl from escaping, also admitting that she tied her up from head to toe. The case rocked the province of Quebec before the details became public knowledge. It was in the wake of this tragedy that the Legault government set up the Laurent Commission to review the entire youth protection system in Quebec. Now, from what I understand, the reason why this story in particular rocked Quebec the way it did, above and beyond the absolutely horrific and tragic details, is that apparently the abuse within this family was known to the system failed to take the proper precautions to protect this child, and as a result the child was killed by her stepmother. So what does the government do when the existing system they already have in place with existing laws to protect children fails to protect children?
They enact more laws.
And back to the second paragraph of the original article we were reading, Bill 15, adopted unanimously Thursday in the National Assembly, promises to prioritize the interests of children over all other considerations, including the interests of parents. Now, I've got a couple of very big problems with the paragraph that we just read. Unanimity is not always a good thing. In the criminal justice system, it's a necessary thing in order to convict an individual, but in the legislative process, it's not a good sign to see unanimity because it means
no one's asking the hard questions.
And my other big problem with this paragraph and with the law itself is that it prioritizes the interests of the child over all other interests, including the interests of the parents. Well, that presupposes that the interests of the parents are not the best interests of the child. Call me cynical, but I don't think it was the absence of a law that prioritized the interests of the child over all other interests, including the interests of the parent, that resulted in the killing of that 7-year-old girl in Granby. In my understanding of the situation, we already had laws in place to prevent such horrible crimes from happening. We already had a system in place to protect children, and that system failed. But when the government fails, what do? They enact more laws. The new law will facilitate the placement of children into foster care, overhauling the principle of parental primacy, which favors keeping children within their biological families, even in cases of neglect and abuse. Let what we just read sink in. Is someone going to actually try to convince me that prior to the adoption of this Bill C-15, we lacked the laws that were required in order to take a child out of an abusive home and put them in foster care? I strongly suspect not, and reading this, it reminds me of something Cicero wisely said several thousand years ago: more laws, less justice, and it doesn't stop there. The bill, spearheaded by Social Services Minister Lionel Carmont, will also ease confidentiality rules, allowing personal information to be shared about children to be shared among authorities and caregivers. The article then goes on to explain the genesis, the raison d'etre of this amendment to the law, and it goes back to that story in Granby and explains how a lot of the information was known at the time, but apparently the system was unable to protect the 7-year-old child. Despite being known to youth protection services, the 7-year-old died as a result of abuse in the home. Her 38-year-old stepmother was found guilty of second-degree murder and forcible confinement. The case led to the creation of the Laurent Commission, chaired by former Nurses Union FIQ President Regine Laurent, which took a hard look at the state of youth protection in Quebec. According to officials, Bill 15 is a direct response to many of the recommendations made in the report. Now that we understand the context and the backstory to the adoption of this law, let's go have a look at the law itself and explore some of the potential theoretical conceptual problems that may result from this law. National Assembly of Quebec, Bill 15, an act to amend the Youth Protection Act and other legislative provisions. Explanatory notes: this bill makes various amendments to the Youth Protection Act. First, First, the bill proposes various amendments to facilitate the interpretation and application of that act by the various actors involved and introduces a preamble. It reaffirms that the interest of the child is a primary consideration in the application of that act. And then a little bit of the preamble that is inserted into that act. The Youth Protection Act, Chapter P34.1, is amended by inserting the following after the title of the act. Quote, as Quebec has declared itself bound by the Convention of the Rights of the Child by Order in Council 1676-1991, dated 9 December 1991, as the interest of the child is a primary consideration of any decision made in the child's regard. Okay, that sounds fair enough in theory, but let's have a look at one article in particular, how they're using the term interests of the child and what could, in theory, be ordered for that child if deemed by the court system to be in the interests of that child. Section 4 of the Act is replaced by the following. Every decision made under this Act must aim at ensuring continuity of care as well as the stability of the child's relationships and of living conditions appropriate to his needs and age. Therefore, keeping the child in his family environment should be favored, provided it is in the child's interest. If in the interest of the child it is not possible to keep the child in his family environment, the decision must seek to entrust the child to the persons most important to him, in particular the grandparents or other members of the extended family. If, in the interest of the child, it is not possible to entrust the child to such persons, the decision must then seek to entrust the child to a living environment most closely resembling a family environment. If, in the interest of the child, it is not possible to return the child to his family environment, the decision must, on a permanent basis, ensure continuity of care and the stability of his relationships and of living conditions appropriate to his needs and age. Are we starting to see some of the potential problems of the application of this provision of law as drafted? Now, I don't think I'm going out on much of a limb to suggest that there were already laws in place that would allow the removal of children from abusive households. They didn't need this amendment in particular. This amendment now throws in the concept of in the interest of the child over the interest of the parents, which in theory should be the interest of the child, to allow the system to literally take a child out of their house
if the system says it's in the best interest of the child.
And it's the system itself that gets to determine what's in the best interest of the child above and beyond the wishes of the parents. How might this provision of law be abused? It's very easy to imagine in two specific contexts. One involves the jab and the other involves transition therapy. This provision of law as drafted allows the system to determine what is in the best interest of the child in situations above and beyond abuse for which there are already measures in place. It allows the system to decide, and it empowers the system to potentially remove children from their families if the system says this is in the best interest of the child, even if the parents don't think it is. In other words, it's potentially the child and the system itself that gets to determine what's in the best interest of the children above and beyond the decision-making of the parent, and that for me is a very,
very big problem.
When I first heard of this proposed amendment that the province of Quebec was basically coming in and saying the state gets to determine above and beyond the parents what is in the best interest of the child, I actually didn't believe it was for real, and then I found out it was for real, and I said if this ever gets passed, that is a line in the sand for me. Fast forward a year, the law has now been passed. It is now official in the province of Quebec. The government knows what is in the child's best interest
above and beyond the parents.
The government is obviously going to say that they are only going to use this law under exceptional circumstances in cases of clear-cut abuse. Yeah, until the government determines that certain acts qualify as abuse. Until the government decides that not giving your child the jab is a form of abuse, that not allowing them to go through hormone transition therapy is a form of abuse. You think this is theoretical?
And I tell you, it's coming.
It is coming, and this law is going to facilitate for it in the same way Jordan Peterson forewarned that Bill C-16 would result in compelled speech, and lo and behold, we now have at least a couple of cases where that turned out to be true. We will see, but that is the latest out of Quebec, and if you like my videos, you like my content, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm. If you want to support the channel, all of the support links are in the pinned comment. We've got some great merch. You can support Robert Barnes and I on Locals at
vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
All of my content is also on Rumble, where you'll find a neat little widget that will bring you directly to our Locals community if you're so inclined. But more important than anything, take care of yourselves, check in on friends and family, make sure everyone around you is doing well, and now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah!